Hello, everybody. Welcome. Dr. Tom here. I'm just setting up the systems. I've got this going on Facebook here, Instagram there, and it's going to go up on YouTube as well. So I'm going to be kind of looking from here, Facebook to and YouTube to here, Instagram. So I'm kind of been jumping around because I want to make sure that, I'm kind of referring to everybody here. But I want to talk to you today. Like I said, I'm going live every day for the next fortnight. Hey guys, we've got a bunch of people joining us. Welcome. So I'm going live every day for the next fortnight because this is the time of the year when, if you haven't started your GAMSAT preparation already, you really need to jump in and do it. So I'm Instagram here and Facebook here, so I'm kind of moving around. So we're running a workshop. It's a 2-week long workshop. It's already started yesterday. There's a link somewhere in here. If you're on Instagram, go to our bio to get the link. And if you're on Facebook or YouTube, there'll be a link in the comments. But the workshop is going for 2 weeks. It started. We're talking about section 1. That's the first lesson of the workshop is section 1. So on the live today, I'm going to talk about section 1 as well. So I'm doing these lives in conjunction with the workshop. Now, what I wanted to talk to you about, now look at my little setup here. It's a little bit, and I'm trying to make it work. I don't want to, it doesn't have to be all fancy pants. It just needs to get going. And so that's one of my big approaches is just get the thing going and then work it out as you go. And this is a good example of that. I'm not going to wait till I got all the production studio set up with all the fancy pants stuff, that kind of all the bells and whistles, which doesn't help anyway. You're here to learn the content and to find out what you need to do to get into medicine. So that's what we're talking about now, despite all the setup and thing here. But yeah, so section 1, often it can be for most people, it's a challenge. Most of the people I speak to, it's a challenge to prepare for section 1, mainly because they're like, how do I actually prepare for this thing? There's so much. It's so unexpected, so unpredictable. It can be on almost anything, right? I like to say that the only thing you can expect to come up in section 1, you can write this down. This is guaranteed. The only thing you can expect to come up in section 1 is the unexpected, right? And it's funny when I say it like that, but it's really true because you don't know whether it's going to be poetry or drama or fiction or non-fiction or long passages or short passages or cartoons or what text is going to come from. I mean, it's pretty lately the trend in the GAMSAT has been to create really long, give you really long passages, right? They give you really long passages to get through, like at least a page long, and it's dense and complicated language. And so a lot of people come to me and to the team and they say, it takes me a long time to get through it. I'm running out of time, right? I'm running out of time because there's just so much in section 1 and the language is so complicated. And, if you're running out of time, now, if you're running out of time, type in time. If time's a problem for you in section 1, type in time at the bottom in the comments. Now, also, if you have any questions about what I'm talking about section 1, type them into the comments below, or type them in and I'll answer them. And if you like what we're talking about, hit the like button, share it with your friends, get it out there. But timing is a factor of 2 things. All right, we've got the crazy afterlife has typed in TIME, time. Yeah, so timing is a factor of 2 things in section 1. Okay, firstly, it's how quickly you can read in general, right? So, how long does it take you to just read in everyday life? Some people I speak to have English as a second or third or fourth language. It's not their first language. So reading speed in general is, look, we got Hasib who said, I feel someone who has English as second language is at a big disadvantage. Yeah, well, that's a really good point. We're going to be talking about that here because that's really important. So let's just break it down. Let's ignore whether your English is your second, first, third, or fourth language, whatever, and focus on the actual skills that you need to develop. And let's talk about timing like we're talking about now. So timing in, like I said, section 1. Number 2, first 2 things. Number 1 is how quickly you read in general. Now, here's the thing. Most people read pretty damn quickly. They read fine in general. It's just fine. If you're getting through a bachelor's degree and you're doing okay, you read just fine. If you feel like, oh no, I'm a slow reader, well, let me ask you this. If you're reading something you enjoy, right? Maybe you've got a science background or you're a pharmacist or something. If you're reading that topic, if you're reading on a topic of science or pharmacy or something that you enjoy, you get through it pretty quickly, right? You read pretty quickly. So it's not so much the reading speed that's the problem. So that's the first thing, right? The reading speed, and it's not that much of a problem for most people. It's the second thing that's the bigger problem, is how quickly you can understand what you've just read, right? And that's the big one for most people when it comes to timing. It takes them a long time to get through it. So, and not just because it's long, the passages are super long, like a page or more each, but because the language is really complicated and dense. For example, tell me if this is your experience. Type in yes if you have this experience where you're reading through a passage, the stimulus material, and then you go to the questions and you're like, man, I don't remember what I just read. And you need to go back to the passage and you need to double check things and reread things. And then you might narrow it down to 2 options, but then you can't pick which one it is. And so then you go back to the stimulus material, trying to read it again, trying to understand it, but it's taking you a long time and the time's running out and you have to pick an answer and you pick the wrong one and you move on, right? Who's had that experience? Yep, says Hasib. Yeah, totally. And a lot of people do, because they don't get that they're not getting what they're reading. And so they slow it down. They have to reread things. Double check stuff, takes up a lot of time. And then they go to the questions and they have to go back to the stimulus material to double check it, still not getting it. And then they panic, they have to move on, pick an answer, and it's usually the wrong one. So the problem there in timing in that case, for most people, is understanding what you've just read. Being able to pull it apart quickly and effectively. Now, here's the thing. Right, this is really important, because when I came across this when I was doing the GAMSAT, I thought to myself, what the hell is this? I want to be a doctor, not a poet. Right? I don't want to be here writing creative fiction and winning Nobel Peace Prizes or selling books or anything like that. I want to become a doctor. And the truth is, you don't have to be a poet or a novel writing genius to do well in section 1 of the GAMSAT. Okay, you don't have to become a perfectly fluent English speaker to get through it. Now, English is my second language too, right? When I came to Australia, I was how old was I? I think I was 4 years old, and I was put into school. I didn't speak any English. They threw me in. My family's from Poland. We immigrated to Australia in 1989 when the USSR, the old Russian kind of thing, was in control of Poland, and it was all a nightmare. And so my parents were like, let's get the hell out. And so they left the country, and they were refugees. They went to some refugee camp, and they were able to get into Australia. But when we arrived, I didn't speak any English. They put me in school, and so I was the only kid who spoke Polish. Actually, there was one more kid in my primary school who spoke Polish. And here was the poor guy who was dragged in to try and translate when I didn't get what the hell they were talking about, because, I was 5, 6, or 7 years old and didn't speak the language. But I improved over time, but it took a long time and it was really difficult for me. In fact, in high school, they put me in English as a second language classes, so ESL classes. I'm sure a number of you have heard of those or you've been in them, but they're pretty much, the cable here is kind of getting all hooked up. So pretty much ESL classes are extra classes for people who are so bad at English that, they're like, you know what, you need extra help, mate. Off you go. And so I was in those classes right through high school. So you can imagine essays. Man, I hated writing essays. Section 1, literature. Are you kidding me? I was not interested in that stuff ever. Even at uni, I studied. My undergraduate was a double degree. It was commerce and science. And under commerce, I did finance was my major, and under science, Psychology was my major. So I did no chemistry, no biology, no physics. And I didn't do any literature interpretation or anything like that. I learned numbers and I learned the mind. That was pretty much it. And so then I was faced with this, the GAMSAT, which is section 1, which is poetry and old literature, the stuff that you walk, if you go to the bookstore, it's the stuff you walk past. It's all got the same themed covers, and really boring. You never think you'd have to ever read that stuff, but now here you are having to become really good at it. And here's the thing: you don't have to become a poet or get a PhD in this stuff to do well. The key thing here is to develop the techniques and the strategies to be able to pull apart, understand, and work with whatever Section 1 stimulus material they give you, right? So that you can understand it, that you can quickly and effectively be able to think with it, and you don't have to be able to, write your thesis on how Shakespeare influenced whatever, because I don't know, because I'm not interested. So instead, we need to focus on the strategies, the techniques, the skills you need to develop that are going to be effective in the GAMSAT, right? Specifically in the GAMSAT and what's being tested here. And a lot of people miss that. And they think, oh, you know what? I'll just read widely. Who's heard that one before? Type in yes if you've heard someone say, read widely. Hey, Nadine, welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you've heard the whole read widely for section 1 and get comfortable with things and stuff, and you know what? You can read a whole bunch of things and not get anywhere in section 1. That's one thing. It's one of my pet peeves when people say reading widely for the GAMSAT. What does that even mean? What are you reading and how widely? And what's actually going to help you? It's a complete waste of time. And people who tell you to read widely, what they're really saying is, hey, man, I don't really know what to do. So just read a whole bunch of stuff and hopefully something works out for you, because I don't really know. So don't listen to them when people tell you to read widely. They don't know what they're talking about. Instead, we need to wipe all that out and stick to the specific strategies and techniques you need to get really good at so that you can handle whatever they throw at you. Like I said, if you're just joining us, the only thing you can expect to come up in section 1 of the GAMSAT, this is guaranteed. The only thing you can expect to come up is the unexpected. Okay, that's one of my catchphrases. Expect the unexpected. And when people are reading widely, they're not actually getting themselves ready for that. They're not developing the right skills to manage whatever they throw at you. Because that's the problem that a lot of people have, not just with section 1, but with section 2 and 3 as well, where they have these predictions. They do a whole bunch of practice papers, and then they believe they figured it out. These are the topics you need to study. These are the things you need to get really good at. I'm going to slide in a little bit to my table so that I can sit back and relax a little bit, because I'm trying to get close to this mic. And it's just a bit uncomfortable. All right. So, yeah, people find themselves not sure how to actually prepare, and they're reading widely and doing a whole bunch of things, but they're not getting ready for what's actually going to come up, which is the unexpected. And this is the trap that a lot of people fall into, where they say, oh, you probably heard it, oh, the GAMSAT's changed. The GAMSAT's changed. It's not what it used to be. They've done this, 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 and this. The truth is, it's always been like that. It's always kind of unexpected. And that's what happens when people are like, oh, I expect this one thing. Actually, Hasib has asked me about vocab. I'm going to come back to that point, Hasib, because this is a really good, big point, vocab. But I want to finish this off first. So people have this particular expectation of the GAMSAT, of section 1. And the problem is because that comes about because they end up just doing a bunch of practice papers and expecting it to be the same as those papers. And then it's completely different when they get there. The format's the same, yes, stimulus material questions, but the questions are very different, unexpected. The stimulus material is a lot longer than you expected, and it's a lot more challenging, plus the pressure of the day, and they kind of freak out, and they come out saying, oh, it's not what I thought, and they're kind of crushed. And I don't want that to happen to you, all right? So the key thing is to get ready for the unexpected and have the techniques and strategies to be able to manage that, and specific ways that you know exactly what to do no matter what they throw at you. Imagine that. right? Rather than seeing the stimulus material and thinking, holy crap, what is this? I've never seen this before. How do I actually understand? I don't understand what's going on here. And then panicking and trying to work through that. Instead, you could see it and go, okay, step 1 is this, step 2, step 3, and know exactly what to do no matter what they give you. A completely different way of doing things, a completely different approach to the GAMSAT and to your medical career as well. I mean, how much better would that feel going into your medical degree, knowing that you're on the right track with your preparation for the GAMSAT and you can handle whatever they throw at you, right? Amazing. The other thing that people struggle with is the vocab. They're like, oh, the words. They use words that are particularly challenging. And the classic example is a question. Now, you've had the stimulus. The way I like to differentiate it is if every unit, so a unit is a combination of the stimulus material and the question. So you might have, a passage and then 1 to 5 questions or more to be able to work through that. Now, Tony Chan has asked, what are the steps? I'll come back to that in a second, Tony. Great question. So a unit is the stimulus material plus the questions, right? So the stimulus material, it can be a passage on all sorts of different things, a cartoon, a graph, a table, a magazine article, all sorts of different things in section 1. The questions themselves, what I call the questions, are the question stems and the options that you can pick, A, B, C, D. Now, I just forgot what I was saying, where I was going with this. The vocab, yes. So the classic example is that people will get through the stimulus material. There's 2 ways that vocab can be a problem. Firstly, in the stimulus material, there's all the vocab, and you're like, right, I don't understand what the hell they're talking about here. They're using some really big words, some unusual words that I've never even used. Hey, Sean, welcome. Welcome, Sean. Welcome, Melissa. They're using big words in the stimulus material that they've never come across before, and then you don't understand stimulus material and you kind of feel lost. That's one. The second one is that the options, the question options, they ask you, for example, what is the tone of the passage? And they use these obscure words that you've never come across before and you never use in normal life, and you're like, dude, I don't know. I could kind of figure out the meaning of one of these words, but the other ones, I'm going to guess this one. I'm going to lose these marks. And that's the one that most people freak out about. Okay. The question where there's the options are these obscure words that they don't actually know what they mean. The truth is, you probably get one question like that, but more than that is very unlikely. 2, 3, a worst case scenario. Worst case, you get 2 or 3 of those questions out of 75. If you just miss 2 or 3 of them, and you save yourself a whole lot of heartache, that's all right. Because here's the thing about vocab lists. The thing I don't like about vocab lists is that you end up with like a list of like 200 words, 200, 300, 400 words, right? Or maybe it's not that much. Maybe it's just 50 or 60 words, but you never go over it. You go over it maybe once or twice, and you don't really do anything with it. You don't remember, the words don't even come up. Maybe one word comes up, but out of that whole exercise. But you've taken a lot of time to create it, and it gives you this false sense of confidence that you're actually, learning something of value. Because chances are you're never going to look over that vocab list. There's way too much for you to actually remember if you did. And number 3, it's probably not even going to come up, right? It's not even going to come up. So then it's not going to help you. A better way of doing things is to follow the instructions that we go through in the workshop. Okay, now Tony Chan was asking about this as well. Good question. So what are the steps to actually being able to pull the stuff apart, understand the stimulus material, work with it, and what are the strategies and techniques? Now, that is a whole bunch of lessons in itself. But I start going into it in our workshop. Now, if you're not already part of that workshop, it's a 2-week workshop, four-part workshop where I go into a lot of depth on each section. The first lesson that's out now is section 1. That's why we're talking about section 1 now. And this video is kind of, I've got Instagram and Facebook going here, so that's why I'm kind of jumping between the two, trying to keep eye contact with you guys. So the workshop goes through some of these techniques. So Tony, anyone else who wants to get started on developing the skills that are actually going to help and that apply to whatever they throw at you, go to the link in the comments, or on Instagram, go to the bio and watch the first recording, the first lesson. If you have questions, let me know. I'm going to be doing these things. Oops, I'm going to kick the table. Oops. I'm going to be doing these lives every day in conjunction with the workshop. So let me know if you have questions. But that'll get you started on developing the skills and the strategies and the techniques that are actually going to help you in section 1. Because reading widely is a massive waste of time. And if you're terrible at English like I was, or maybe English is your first language, but you're a science person and you never like literature, same thing goes for you. You don't have to become a poet to get good at this. You don't have to become a poet to get through the GAMSAT. You don't have to have a literature degree. What you need are techniques and strategies and skills that are actually applicable to the unexpected things that come up in section 1. And we go through that in our workshop. So any other questions? So we've talked about vocab, we've talked about reading widely, we've talked about the steps and timing, why timing's a problem for a lot of people. The other thing that some people worry about are the specific genres. They might be like, oh crap, poetry. I hate poetry, I'm not very good at it, I don't understand it. Or the long, complex passages. Now, that's a common one. Long, complex passages are a problem. Or the vocab like we're talking about. The timing is a common one as well. And not knowing how to actually prepare for section 1. How do you actually, other than just doing a bunch of practice questions, which, to be honest, doesn't actually help that much. Now, this is another trap that a lot of people fall into. They say, oh, I don't know how to prepare for this section, so I'll read widely and do a bunch of practice questions and hopefully something works out. The problem with that is that you can't do well on the questions until you've developed the skills to do well on them. So when you're just, it's a bit hot in here. So when you're just doing question after question, it's kind of like when, the analogy that I like to use is when, and you'll hear me talking about this a lot, is the Olympic sprinter analogy. Okay, so let's say, preparing for section 1 is kind of like when someone wants to go to the Olympics and they want to run really fast. So they want to become an Olympic sprinter. The first thing they would do is they'd get the book by the world running expert on all the different skills and techniques and strategies they need to get really good at to run really fast. And then they go to training and they spend all of their time in training developing those skills, because that's where they become fast runners, in training, doing the drills and the exercises to get stronger and better and faster, because that's where they become fast runners. And then occasionally they go to a local competition and they'll run that race at the local competition and their coach will go, right, you need to raise your knees more. And at that point, do they go straight to the next local competition or do they go back to training? They go back to training, right? And they work on that skill of raising their knees more and other skills and other techniques and other strategies to keep getting better and faster and stronger, because that's where they become fast runners. That's where the magic happens. And then they go to the next local competition to assess their progress, and they keep repeating that process until they get to the Olympics. So do you see how that relates to your GAMSAT preparation? Right? So have a think about how it relates, because here's the key bit that a lot of people miss. What most people say when I ask them this question, they go, yeah, you need to do a lot of practice and get really good and get feedback. And you do a lot of practice questions to get good at it, and then you test yourself on timed exams later on. Kind of, but it misses the main point here. The main point here, it works like this, right? The first bit, where they read the book by the world running expert. That's like you learning what types of techniques and skills and strategies you need to get really good at to do well in section 1 of the GAMSAT. What we've been talking about here and what we go into more detail in the workshop, and the online workshop, register above. And that's where you identify what those things are. Then you go to training, and then you spend all of your time in training developing those skills. Now, that training time has nothing to do with practice questions. Okay, the practice questions are the local competitions, right, where you test yourself, because you can't do that sprinter is not going to do well on the tests until they've done the training. So yeah, so the training times where you develop the skills, the local competitions are like the practice questions and practice exams where you assess your progress and see what else is missing, what you need to be doing, what you need to be working on. Now, when people say, "Oh, I'm just going to do lots of practice questions," that's like if that sprinter were to say, "I want to go to the Olympics," and they skip the book, they skip all the training, and they just do one race after another. And you can imagine how badly that would go, right? Imagine you and I just going, right, I want to go to the Olympics, and we just run one race after another. We'd run that first race. That sprinter would run that first race. They'd pull a bunch of muscles because they haven't done any training. They'd feel like crap at the end of it, really sore. Oh, my legs hurt, my back, my arms, whatever, in a lot of pain. And they'd go really slow, feel really bad about themselves. Like, oh my God, I ran out of time. I was really slow, really bad. Can I improve? All these doubts will be coming up. Oh my God, am I good enough? Can I do this? But I need to push on to the next one. Let's push on to the next set of practice questions. Let's just jump in. And so that sprinter will be like, oh, I need to push on to the next competition. Oh, I don't know what to do. I'll just raise my arm. I'll swing my arms. Well, yeah, that's what I'll do. And they jump straight into that next race because they're just doing practice questions. And they run that next race, and it's just as bad as the first one. And they're going really slow, and they're out of time, and they're out of breath, and it's really bad, and they feel really bad about themselves, and they run out of time, and they're sitting there at the end of it going, oh my God, that was really bad. How can I actually do this? Oh, I don't know. I need to push on. Let's do the next one. And they jump straight to the next race, and the same thing's going on. That's what happens if you're just doing practice questions and practice exams. If they're timed or untimed, it's the same thing. Now, is this sounding familiar? Now, who's done this and is feeling that way because they've just done a bunch of practice questions for section 1? Or you've ignored it completely because you don't know how to prepare for it. So that's a problem. So the key thing that you're missing here is what to actually do in your GAMSAT training time to develop those skills. And if you want to see what those are and how to start doing that, go to the link above or below. I'm not quite sure. Somewhere around this video, there's going to be a link to our workshop. It's in the first couple of weeks of January. It's happening right now if you're seeing this live or soon after it's recorded. But go to the link, register, watch the lesson on section 1, and start applying that stuff too. We've also got a reading list for you. And it's not a reading widely type of list. It's very specifically chosen for texts that you need to be going through to get ready for this. You can apply the skills that we talk about in the workshop to those books, and start applying this stuff. Cool. So let's see. I've just got some stuff coming through. So it looks like Brisbane Life with Chickens. Have you got questions? Have you got a question? Why don't you type that in? I see you asking to go live with me. I don't know if my bandwidth can handle that today. I've never done that before, so I've got to double check that. So I'll probably try to start that from tomorrow because I'm going to be doing these lives every day, these videos every day in conjunction with the workshop that we're running. So if you have a question, type it in and happy to answer it for you. But if that's everything, see you guys next time. See you guys tomorrow and enjoy the workshop. I'll see you on the other side. All right, now I've got to end this. I've got Instagram here. I've got Facebook here. Let me end all this stuff, and I'll see you on YouTube as well.